Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Plan Board to order. If everyone can have a seat. Thank you for joining us this evening. Mr. Castillo, can you start with a roll call, please?
Sure thing. Stephanie Sutton.
Here.
Bob Ackerman.
Here.
Thomas Hawkins.
Here.
James Blythe.
Here.
Sophia Corrugetto.
Here.
Jason Hurst.
Here.
Joshua Ney.
Here.
Tina Certain.
Okay, great, thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
Before we do that, I wanted to know if I can make a motion to move the comprehensive plan discussion item to the top of the agenda.
The information item?
Yes.
We can, if there's a second for that.
Yeah, I'm very interested in doing that too, but I assume everybody's here for the information item. Maybe we could do a show of hands just to see if that's.
I assume so. If you're here for to speak on the information item, the comp plan amendment and land development code amendment, not a site-specific amendment.
Are you asking for comment?
No, we're considering rearranging the agenda. And so we'd like to know who is here to speak to which item. So we are thinking that you are all here to speak to the last item on the agenda, the information item about exclusionary zoning information.
Yes.
Okay, so raise your hand if that is what you were here to speak to. Okay, great, so the majority. Okay, so we have a motion to move the information item up. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Any opposed? Okay, so we will move forward with that. Next, we have approval of the minutes. There is an error on this. It's actually the January 27th regular meeting minutes, not the workshop minutes from a couple weeks ago. Can we get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Then what we will do, before we get into new business, we do have public comment. I have a couple of people who checked that they wanted to speak with general public comment. So I'm going to give you the chance to speak now, but if you'd rather wait until we read the information item into the record and hear more about it, if you're here to speak to that item, I would recommend you wait until we hear from staff. But just making sure that we don't have people that want to speak on something else. Kim Tanzer, would you like to speak now or wait for the information item? Okay. Eric Toros, I believe?
Later.
Okay. July Thomas? July? Okay. And then I have a couple people who didn't check a box. Susan Milbrath?
Later.
Okay. Maria Jones?
Later.
Okay. And Nancy Morris?
Later.
Okay. So we will call on you all after we hear from staff on the information item. So with that, we'll go right into new business with the information item moved first. Mr. Castillo, can you read it? We do. Okay, I'm not sure if there's an adjustment that they can make in the back at all with the volume in the room. We haven't had an audience like this in a while, so.
Hey, booth guys, can you raise the volume?
Can you raise the volume in the room, please? Okay, we got a thumbs up from back there, so I think, is that any better for you all? Okay, great. With that, can we read the item into the record and hear the staff presentation, please?
Sure. Information item number 210948, exclusionary zone information item to discuss amendments to the comprehensive plan and land development code. The City of Gainesville requests to amend the comprehensive plan's future land use element to allow for small-scale multifamily as a permitted use in properties designated as single-family amend the land development code to consolidate single-family zoning, introduce residential zoning, amend uses within urban transit zone U1, amend setback, lot size, dimensions, removing occupancy limits, increasing bedroom limit within the UF context zone, amending compatibility requirements, amending lot split, and minor subdivision regulations.
Thank you.
And I will be presenting pretty much every item.
Okay, great. The man of the hour, Mr. Castillo.
The man of the hours. Let's see here. Let's share my screen really quickly. All right, let me share my screen. All right. Okay, there we go. Can everybody hear me? All right, perfect. For the record, my name is Juan Castillo. I am joined by Forrest Elton and Brittany McMullen virtually. We are planners for the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you was initiated by the City Commission, who gave direction to staff to work on items stemming from the exclusionary zone and inclusionary zone study done by HRNA consultants and presented to the Commission. In this presentation, we will start with an introduction of the context in which the proposal is being made. Then we will discuss three goals of increasing increasing the amount of the type of housing, increasing the cost to build housing, and increasing the options of using existing housing. Within each goal, we will discuss the strategies for accomplishing the goals presented. The City of Gainesville, as we probably all know, is experiencing housing instability. According to the HRNA study, we simply don't have the housing stock to meet the demand, and houses that are available are actually too expensive for most people to afford. The City of Gainesville asked HRNA Consulting Group to analyze and address the housing instability, and the consulting group identified three key components. One, segregation, where race was a key determinant of where a person was able to live. Two, an extreme burden of housing costs. And three, housing access and the quality of housing available. The data shows that race is a determinant of where people live in Gainesville. Gainesville's black household population tend to occupy what is commonly known as the missing middle type of housing, or like buildings with 2 to 4 units at a higher rate relative to the population. However, white households are more likely to own and live in single-family homes or large apartment complexes. The difference in these occupancy rates reflect the fact that Gainesville's missing middle housing tend to be more affordable to low and middle income residents compared to single-family homes. This matters because in Gainesville, anyone that makes less than $35,000 annually will experience high rates of housing cost burden. The median income in Gainesville is around $37,000 to $40,000 annually. But as data shows, only white and Asian households earn consistently above the median household income. Black households make around 73% of that median, underscoring the hardship black households face in finding affordable housing. Three desired outcomes were identified in the study. The first outcome was a need to increase the amount and type of housing in residential areas. The second, the need to decrease the cost to build and to maintain a house. The third was to increase options for the use of the houses that are already in existence. To reach these outcomes, the study suggested that strategies which we're about to discuss, and as I have mentioned, the Commission has instructed staff to bring these proposals before them as action items. In order to increase, let me move this presentation along, sorry about that. In order to increase the housing type in Gainesville, several strategies are being proposed, starting with amending the future land use the future land use element in the comprehensive plan. Currently, 63% of properties in Gainesville have a single-family land use. This means that 63%, let me move this out of the way here. There we go. That's still in the way. There we go. Okay. All right. That means that in Gainesville, 63% of the land only support single-family zoning and residential and urban zone 1 zonings, which will primarily allow for the construction of one house supporting one family on one parcel. The proposal is to amend the future land use map in order to provide the opportunity for corresponding zoning that would allow for a mix of housing types in order to incorporate that missing middle type of housing, or 2 to 4 units, small scale, multifamily housing in more places in Gainesville. The first proposal is to remove single family as land use and amend the future land use map to replace single family land use with residential low land use. This will support the existing single family development while allowing the possibility for a more flexible residential zone. The second option is to amend the existing single-family zoning land use to incorporate language that would allow for the flexibility of small-scale multifamily development with 2 to 4 units per building. Either option would support a more diverse housing stock and would be consistent with our comprehensive plan goals and the direction of the Commission. The second strategy is to amend the zoning districts in Gainesville to facilitate the construction of a more diverse housing stock. In order to do so, the proposal is to consolidate the single-family zoning districts into one residential zoning district that would be consistent with the land use amendment we just discussed and allow for small-scale multifamily developments of 2 to 4 units per building while still permitting the existing uses of single-family zoning. With the consolidation, we would also amend the allowed density to 12 units per acre, the non-residential building coverage to 40%. Minimum lot area would be required to be 3,000 square feet. Lot width dimensions for single family will be 35 feet, and for 2 families will be 70 feet. We would eliminate lot depth requirements and reduce setbacks to front setbacks to 10 feet, side setbacks to 5 feet, and rear setbacks to 10 feet. Building height would remain at 3 stories and would not have an option for bonus height. These lot side dimensions and setbacks largely mimic the existing residential conservation zone, which has similar lot dimensions and setback requirements. These dimensions are not new and currently exist within some of our oldest neighborhoods. Amending regulations for setbacks and lot sizes requirements are important because they afford the flexibility for more land utilization on any given property. I would like to point out that the proposal before you would not eliminate single-family housing as a use, nor would it force the splitting of a property or would allow the development of high-density, tall buildings. Small-scale multifamily would be regulated to 2 to 4 units per building at a maximum height that is currently allowed in single-family zoning, and that's 3 stories. Staff will also introduce language that would regulate the design for buildings that incorporate 3 or more units within the RZ zone in order to produce a development that is consistent with a single-family characteristic. The intent is for the resulting development to look like a single-family home, but serve more than just one family. Again, about 63% of properties in Gainesville are zoned for single-family residential, so this proposal would affect a significant portion of Gainesville and will provide a much-needed tool to address our current lack of housing stock. Again, to be clear, this would not eliminate single-family as a use, nor would force properties to develop multifamily. Rather, this would provide homeowners with more options to develop their properties. Along with amending the single-family residential zones, we would also amend U1 transit zones to allow for small-scale multifamily as a permitted use, as well as the mobile home zoning, similarly to allow for small-scale multifamily. Now, I am going to turn it over to Forrest Edelton, to speak about the lot split component of this proposal.
Thank you, Juan, and good evening, everybody. Forrest Edelton, planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. So far, Juan's done a great job going over a lot of the development-focused regulations or restrictions or conversation. And what I'm going to dive into here next is a conversation more about the division of property itself. So less about the actual physical structure and more about the size of the property or what you can do with the property as a property owner. So limits to the ability of property owners to divide their property also serve as limits to the creation of new housing, infill development, and more dense land uses. Lot dimension requirements intentionally limit the size of a lot, which in turn influences and directs the growth of neighborhoods to consist of larger land area devoted to a smaller number of homes. In addition, complex regulations and high costs associated with the requirements to divide property limits the efficient and orderly division of property, especially within the existing single-family districts. Approvals for lot splits and minor subdivisions are often, if not always, contingent upon physical infrastructure being constructed even before the property can be divided. This requirement creates expensive barriers that prevents property owners from extracting wealth and value from their land. This is particularly important in the discussion of property that's been deeded over to a group of family members, say after another family member has died or passed away. These are commonly known as heirs properties. Heirs properties can sit for decades underused while legal issues of ownership are worked out. Currently, even in cases where heirs are in agreement as to the division of property or how it should be divided, the costs can be impossible to surmount if infrastructure or other physical improvements are required as a part of the division of property. The proposed amendments to the existing lot split and minor subdivision regulations shown on these next few slides, are intended to lower the costs and complexities currently built into the process. The majority of these changes are minor tweaks, and you'll see that as we go through the slides, that largely seek to clarify existing language. Where these changes will have a major impact is by limiting the requirements of dividing property to securing any necessary titles and land use rights that would be required in order to provide the future infrastructure or improvements. Development of lots created by lot splits or minor subdivisions will be contingent upon required physical improvements being provided prior to the issuance of building permits or development orders. So an important difference there is that the division of property will now be able to come first, while the infrastructure and improvements are tied more to the development review process or a building permit review process. And so if you would just scroll through some of the slides, Juan, I think we can just show that some of these are minor. And some of this is really changes to the process. You can see that currently the code does not require things like a pre-application meeting. We have put that in our suggested code to really be more forward and reach out more to our citizens in order to help them navigate these complex processes. Many of the requirements that are in there today that do come up or are often popular subjects or sticking points are still in the language that we're proposing. For example, the requirements for stub outs to provide for access to adjacent properties. Stormwater review can still take place. And functions of the process like that. And I think the next slide is the end of these suggestions here. And again, this is really largely process improvements, language to help simplify the process of dividing that property. And where it does affect the physical improvement or the encouraging of physical improvements or infrastructure to the site, that ability is still retained through the process. It is essentially just moved over to the physical review, the development review stage. And with that, I will turn it over to Brittany.
Good afternoon or good evening, Plan Board members. Brittany McMullen, planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. So 2 more areas that the exclusionary zoning report asked us to or suggested that we look into are historic district overlays as well as development compatibility requirements in relation to these overlays as well as single family housing typologies in general. Staff did take a look at both of those issues. We do not propose to amend any historic preservation overlays at this time or compatibility requirements between historic districts and new development, but we are taking a look at eliminating some compatibility requirements between multifamily and single family uses. If you could go to the next slide. These are the primary suggestions that we have at this point in time. This code exists, or this table exists in the code today, which regulates building height in relation to historic districts and single family zoning. For properties within 100 feet of the districts, of the single family zoning districts and the U1 zoning district, the commission had asked us to look at eliminating some compatibility requirements there. So those proposals are shown on this screen here. In addition, we are also considering and would really like your feedback on item D in this same section, which requires a decorative masonry wall as well as a landscape buffer between multifamily and single family property. We do not recommend changes at this point in time to landscape or vegetative buffers, but we do think that potentially the masonry wall requirement could impact cost for new small scale multifamily developments that are adjacent to single family. We do think that the vegetative buffers are still important and can provide some of the same benefits such as sound attenuation and visual barriers and things like that. But the masonry wall requirement could actually get to a cost savings and further allow for somebody to develop that missing middle housing type. So these are the compatibility requirements that we're suggesting at this point in time. There's also some requirements in this section that talk about not placing things such as recreation areas directly adjacent to single family. We don't propose any changes to that section. We still find that those would be appropriate compatibility requirements here. So we're not proposing to remove all compatibility requirements, just to take a look at some of them, and we'd love your feedback on those as well. And then I think Juan will move on with the next section.
So the last 2 strategies deal with increasing options within existing housing. There are 2 components to these strategies. The first is to address occupancy requirements, which prohibit more than one family from living in one structure, which limits housing flexibility. The second component addresses bedroom limits, which restricts the amount of bedrooms allowed in residential units within the University of Florida context area. The proposal is to strike occupancy limit language from the LDC. Occupancy language primarily regulated homes within strict single-family zoning. With the proposed zoning consolidation, residential zoning in Gainesville would allow for small-scale multifamily homes and thus would no longer be strictly single-family development. As for the bedroom limits within the UF context area, originally the language was proposed to regulate excessive bedrooms as a component of one unit of development. The bedroom limit, however, does restrict how many bedrooms are available for housing occupation. To address this, two options are being proposed. The first option is to increase the bedroom limit from a multiplier of 2.75 to 3. This would have little impact to smaller scale multifamily developments, but would allow more bedroom units for larger multifamily developments. The second option is to remove the limit altogether. So, to summarize, Gainesville is in dire need of more housing and more housing types so that all people, regardless of race or income level, can live and work in Gainesville. To this end, 3 outcomes were identified. That is to increase the amount of housing in residential areas, decrease the cost of building, and increase options for the use of existing housing. In order to accomplish these outcomes, we've discussed strategies from amending the comprehensive plan to facilitate lot splits and amending the compatibility requirement. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I am here and available for any questions, as well as my colleagues over Zoom. And yeah.
Thank you. Andrew, did you want to add something?
Well,
Looked
I
like
just
you were-
wanted to add that, obviously, tonight is an information item. We wanted to get, sort of get the first blush of this item before the board for discussion. Take any comment. This is obviously something that the commission has asked us to do, and so we're bringing this forward. I anticipate this is probably going to be a multi-meeting process as we work through this, and then bring recommendations to the city commission. So I just wanted to put that out there. So that's all to say that we're not asking for any votes tonight.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
We appreciate that. Are there questions from the board for staff? Sophia, go ahead.
Thank you. So my question is, looking at that map of where single-family zoning currently is in Gainesville and what we see kind of popping up, I feel like that zoning restriction really only restricts the development we see in one major area of Gainesville, like Central and West Gainesville, and I feel like it's not really restricting development currently where we see a lot of development happening northeast of Gainesville. I feel like even though it's single-family neighborhoods or at least single-family homes, we're still seeing a lot of high density. So I'm curious how, doing this very blanket-like as opposed to creating zones where this is going to take place, how that won't necessarily amplify displacement or gentrification, but rather curb this, in the name of being more inclusive as opposed to exclusive here.
So I think the issue with the proposal before you this evening is to provide more opportunities to be able to create more housing options for Gainesville residents. Currently, the areas that you see on the map that are not highlighted or not identified would allow for a type of multifamily development as is. And so the goal here is to look at places in Gainesville that strictly do not allow for multifamily development. In this case, small-scale multifamily development of 2 to 4 units, which data shows is primarily used by black citizens and minorities, and to provide that opportunity for development in order that Gainesville will have that diversity of housing option of the missing middle, if you will. So, I think, does that answer your question, Ms. Corrigan?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see how it's going to incentivize more development in areas where it's currently restricted. The thing is, I just feel like I feel like it's tough, right? Like it's addressing a problem, but I feel like in addressing it, it kind of creates windows for other issues. So I just wonder how this won't get rid of middle housing in other neighborhoods, as opposed to just, you know what I mean? So I'm just kind of stuck between seeing how this is going to be more helpful than not helpful.
Well, it may help. It may help. Like this proposal is not. We're not eliminating the current ability to the current ability of development in Gainesville. Like, if multifamily development is allowed in a particular zone in the northeast part of Gainesville, we're not getting rid of that. What we are allowing, or what we are proposing, is to provide more flexibility for existing single-family zoning so that property owners can provide, if they so choose to. Again, this is not forcing them to do this. They can choose very well not to. It would still be allowed not to, if you will, in the zoning that's being proposed. But if they so choose to, they can now have the option to develop a small-scale multifamily unit of two to four units, which will, again, the hopes is to allow for the incorporation of the missing middle within more areas in the city of Gainesville.
Okay. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a lot of thoughts, and I think most of them are constructive in terms of how we can take maybe some of the aspirations that are here and go forward into the future. But I don't necessarily want to. I'd like to hear what folks in the audience say before we get into that, because I think it'll be more. I think we'll have a more constructive conversation if we sort of air some of those thoughts and comments first. But I did have one specific question based on the staff presentation. One of the phrases that's used in the draft is small-scale multifamily. And when I read the words in the code, small-scale multifamily, I've always thought that that meant 2 to 4 units. It says 2 to 4 units per building. But I know that staff understands the phrase to mean something different. We could have much larger buildings with dozens or hundreds of units that were small-scale multifamily. And so I would just want to make sure we all understand that. Maybe we could walk through staff's understanding of that phrase, so that if what we thought we were talking about was duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes, we could note that so that we used a different phrase or more appropriate language, because small-scale multifamily doesn't mean that.
And I would say maybe one option in terms of, since we're looking at a variety of code changes, we could potentially consider just striking small-scale multifamily, since it's not particularly well defined in code, and then replacing that with maybe more explicit duplex, triplex, and quadruplex in its place potentially.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the board before we open it to the public? One thing I would like to just point out, and maybe get confirmation from staff that I'm thinking about this properly. I know the city commission did something different with the ADU ordinance than what we recommended, and my understanding is what they ended up doing is essentially in all of these areas, any property owner can have both an attached and a detached ADU. So any single family lot in the city right now can have 3 units on it. Can we get confirmation on that?
That is correct, right? There are some limitations in terms of square footage, but that's a correct understanding of our current ADU ordinance.
Okay, so I just want to make sure everyone sort of understands the current state of events. That is different than the recommendation that came out of this plan board. That's what the city commission decided to do with the ADU ordinance. But just so you all are aware, single family zoning currently does allow additional ADU units on it. So I just want to be clear on that before we start with public comment. So I have a list of people here. It looked like July, is that correct?
Can I ask a question quick? Is it?
Can you come up to the microphone? And actually, your card is on the top, so you can start with your
Can I ask
question.
a question without, I'm going to use my whole 3 minutes. Okay, so the first question is on the ADU note. It has to be owner occupied, right, in order to have an ADU?
So it does
No.
not.
So that didn't end up
So
going through
that
that
is
way.
something
Okay.
that's different than what the plan board recommended. It does not have to be owner occupied.
Right. I forgot that another thing that they swung through. Okay, so let's talk about a few different things here. First thing is, the map that shows which areas are going to be upzoned. Cool, thank you, I really appreciate that. So if you look at this, you can tell.
Can you please stay at the microphone, because we just have to pick it up. I
I'll point.
apologize.
You got a laser pointer or something? No, it's all good. All right, so if you look at this map, you'll notice that there's no consideration of land value economics or anything going on here. So it looks equitable, right? Like we've upzoned all the northwest, which is very rich, and we're going to upzone everything on the southeast and into the northeast, which is relatively poor. And you think like, oh, there's going to be equitable development across these areas, right? You have to consider which areas are going to be targeted by investors for redevelopment. Of course, currently the northeast has been slowly building up to being redeveloped, and this is very well timed. That's actually the thing that's going to explode with redevelopment if you allow this through. Now, there's a lot of discussion here about missing middle housing, and I'm not sure how familiar y'all are with the genesis of that term. It was invented by a guy named Daniel Perelik like 15 years ago. He wrote a book about missing middle housing, and his solution to missing middle housing is actually not upzoning. What he advocates for is moving away from unit per acre and moving toward hard restrictions on building size. And he says that if you do this, then you'll have developers who will choose, rather than say a single family home or threeplex, like 3 townhomes, if the building size is restricted, then they will maximize their profit by building, say, a 6-plex. He has like one example where he does this, and he shows, so the 6-plexes will go out for half the cost that townhomes would have gone out at, and thus you've created affordable housing by restricting the building size. So a lot of what was proposed, there's a whole bunch here, this is very comprehensive, but a lot of what was proposed here deals with opening up the size of the buildings and things like that. And what you look at is we have examples in this community. I'm really sorry, Tom, I'm not coming at you sideways. I'm a big fan. I just happen to live on your street. And your house is a perfect example of the kind of thing that Daniel Perelik speaks out against, because you built a single family home. You did what you're supposed to do. You did what anyone would have done. But you just built the most gigantic house you could fit on that lot, right? So it is a beautiful house. No shame on that. But specifically what he was talking about was if you actually restrict the size, then you're going to get buildings that are more to scale. And thus you won't stimulate the same kind of investment in an area that you might lead to sort of gentrification and displacement like we're going to have with this sort of thing. Now, all this is to say that this is a very complex issue that requires very complex solutions and requires this conversation to be opened up. And I would just caution y'all, because this is an election year, there's a majority on the commission up for election, and the goal in this election is to open this conversation up a little bit more. So I would just beg that you would decide to table this and allow us to take this to the voters and let the voters decide if this is the type of thing that they want to do before you implement these things that are going to lead to, some development, but it's only a few more months until the election, right? So anyway, that's my request. I appreciate it, everybody.
Great. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Ms. Tanzer, we're going to have you go next, if that's all right. And then after her, I have Eric Toros.
And I'm hoping I can have the overhead. Do you have?
They should be able, can the AV room pull up the overhead, please? And we are going to run the timer for 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, I'm going to ask you to wrap up your thoughts, just so that everyone has enough time.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to start by underscoring what Ms. Sutton said, and I appreciate you bringing that to everyone's attention, because the city has already upzoned itself as much as Minneapolis did. So at 3 units per acre, we are at the Minneapolis level already. Whether we like it or not, and I supported 1 ADU, not 2, but we are there. So that's the first point, and thank you for reminding us. Second, I'd like to say that you see a few people here tonight, but I only learned about this 2 days ago. It was not noticed in any way that I know, and most people do not go through plan board agendas for fun. So I very much, believe it or not, you all may, but I doubt it.
We understand.
Yeah, but I hope that you will broaden this conversation considerably through workshops. And in addition, I hope that you'll split apart different parts of the conversation, because the issue about removing the limits of how many people are in how many bedrooms is totally different from 12 units or 15 units per acre across the whole city. Second, I'd like to say that you all showed a report by HRA and its advisors tonight. It's not one I've ever seen before, and it's not on your city's website. It's not searchable. So you're using data that we do not have available. Data that I do have available, that because I've been watching this issue, includes that this is the Affordable Housing Action Plan, which was commissioned not by a real estate development firm, which is what HRNA is, but by a housing firm. They tell us that the homeowner vacancy rate in Gainesville is 4.9%, considerably higher than the 1.7% nationally. So we have more vacant homes. We also have a considerably higher vacancy rate in rental units, 17% versus 6%. That's incorrect, or it's in dispute whether we really even need more housing as compared to cheaper housing or in different places or whatever. The HUD market analysis points out that the sales market and rental market are both balanced as of 2021. So I think that it would be important to get more data, and data that has not been picked up by consultants that you hired, so you can have a broader understanding of what's really going on here. Finally, I'd like to point out that one of my concerns, and I have many, is that upzoning is irreversible, of course. And you all selected some pictures that showed, let's see, where is it? That showed a charming picture of a quadruplex that looks just like the house next door, except that if you look at this quadruplex next to the house next door, it's about half again as big. And that's what happens in these circumstances. The only comparable city I know to what you're trying to do is Houston, and this is what Houston looks like. And this is what I'm trying to avoid for Gainesville. Because those of you who are avowed new urbanists in the group are looking for charming. I like charming too. I've lived in the traditional new urban neighborhoods of the early 20th century. That's not what you're going to get with this. You're going to get horrors. And if you live in this house, yeah, you don't have to sell your house, but that's what's next door to you. That's what we need to talk about as a community. Perhaps I'm alone in that feeling, but I doubt it. And especially among the people who are new urbanists, the kind of form-based codes that you all hope to drive development in Gainesville will not turn out the way you think they will. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up is going to be Nancy Morris. Go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Eric Torres. I'm a professor of mathematics. I've been studying real estate since I was 8 years old, and I watched PBS on a Sunday morning explaining the value of why you should study real estate, and it greatly impacted my desire to get my degrees in accounting, mathematics, and applied economic real estate market analysis. That being said, I have some serious concerns about what you all are doing. And I'd like to preference that I did not own any property between 2007 and 2011 for this very reason. I didn't get hurt on the last bad choices we made. But a lot of my fellow Americans did, especially in this city. So I'm going to say this very, very clearly. You can't outbuild an economic bubble. That's not exactly how it works. Right now, we have a lot of people converting to Airbnbs. A lot of investors are coming in with cash because it's economically viable to pull up this real estate and develop it. And that's why you're seeing these cash offers, because people like me know what they're doing, and they're coming in to make a buck. And I understand that makes for some unaffordable housing in the short run, and it's inconvenient, and it's unfair. And some people are getting displaced because of that. But if you attempt to build your way out of this, I guarantee, and this is not a local problem, this is a national problem. And so was 2007 a national problem. How bad we will pay in 10 years from this national problem depends on the choices that you all are making this evening, or will continue to make. Now, it will get worse. But flooding the market with properties has an extraordinarily high price down the road. There are consequences to those choices. We've seen that. The reason why I didn't make that mistake, because I have learned from history. I study history. My father was a historian. So, I suggest you think about exactly what you're doing, and it sounds good, and your objectives are very valid, and I commend them. It will also lead to development in our city that is unsustainable because you do not have the footprint for traffic, schools, or any other way to handle this increased population density, which will cost the city a tremendous amount of money, and then the market will change. And if you do not think it's going to change, then I sincerely suggest you spend a little time educating yourself about the real estate market analysis. And I guarantee you, who profited last time? The same people who'd like to profit today, the real estate developers. And they're going to walk away in plenty of time. We will be left holding the choices you all are making. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Morris next, and then Susan Milbreth after that, please.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak with you. I live in the Northwest section, and we bought our house 35 years ago. My husband and I live on the end of a street, and we love watching all the birds and just have a wonderful, peaceful neighborhood at this point, except for the B&B that Airbnb that established itself in the last 2 years. They have 6 cars parked in their front, okay? We have small streets in my neighborhood. I'm in Mason Manor. They're not very big. So I'm trying to imagine as I drive down my street today how it's gonna look, because there's just not that much parking. The other problem that I have is that they redid the sewers in our neighborhood in the last 2 years. They needed to put in bigger pipes because Raintree developed and there was more flooding. We live right along the creek and it's a very dynamic area. Well, now when we have terrible rains, the neighbors right on 8th Avenue have sewage pop up from these pipes. So I'm not sure how we're gonna manage to live without stinky sewer water now if we put more and more people in there. And we're making the assumption that it is going to be the families that are lower income that move in. I think it's going to be students. I think we're being naive when we say that it's going to be, other people moving in. I think that's a false assumption. And I think the phrase multifamily unit is a misnomer because I think it's going to be multi-student, students moving in. So I appreciate your comment about saying whether it's a duplex or a quadruplex, because that really sort of clarified it for me. And did I understand that there might be mobile homes approved for the area? I couldn't quite hear in the back. Was that something? No, so no mobile homes. Okay. But again, I wish you would really consider, and I love the idea of doing more workshops and getting more involvement. I too only heard about this from a friend a couple days ago, and I do appreciate you all listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Milbreth next, and then Maria Jones following her.
Yeah, we've just spent a whole lot of money renovating our house and making it nice, and everybody on our street, Southwest 2nd Avenue, has done the same. The next block over, it's people who are not taking care of their homes, and they're renting out to multiple students. So there's more than one family living in these places, and there's no regulation. We've reported it a number of times. And I'm just trying to think of what a 60-foot high building behind our house is going to look like, because those people will immediately sell. I mean, they don't care. They're not living there. And they're going to basically trash our whole neighborhood the moment you give them the opportunity. Right now, they just, got 10 students living there, and there's no control for, the city doesn't do anything. You can call them, and there's no policing of it at all. And across the street, we've had better ones, but that is more to the point that they claim to be sisters and brothers, and all, I mean, most of you don't really know what it's like to live close to the university, because we are being, pretty much assaulted by, student housing all around us, and, we're trying to keep our places up, but it's going to look like trash pretty soon. So, anyway, I hope you stop it.
Thank you. Maria Jones, you give us just a second to clean the podium, and then following her, Robert Mounts.
Hi, I'm Maria Jones, and I live in Gainesville. I've been living within the city limits of Gainesville since 1994. And I'm assuming, I know very little about this new rezoning, but one thing I'm assuming is that we're talking about within the city limits, right? Okay, and so I have several questions that are really, I'm kind of zooming out now. And my first question is, what size city would constitute the ideal city? And does anyone at the Department of Sustainable Development have an answer for this? Because I think that this is critical, okay? What constitutes a livable city? And since I moved to Gainesville, I thought this was it, that this had everything you want to offer, and that it had an incredible quality of life. Okay, so my second question is it necessary for a city to grow? Is that a must, or can that be avoided? It seems, listening to you all, that it is a must. I'm not sure about that. Okay, so when I look at talking about Gainesville earlier as being a great place to live, I'm thinking about the Gainesville metropolitan area. And I don't even know where the limits to the Gainesville metropolitan area are. I'm not talking about the city limits. Those are so absurd that I just, fail to understand them. And in my opinion, anything that says Gainesville in the address would be the Gainesville metropolitan area. And so if we look at those studies, this study that you have in this document, the HRNA, they're talking about how few affordable housing, and if you all of a sudden used the Gainesville metropolitan area, what would those numbers be like? How different would they be? Okay, so that's another thing that I just am curious. Why build more vacancy? That's the vacancy rate in Gainesville city limits might be one, but not within the Gainesville metropolitan area. We have an incredible vacancy when we talk about that. And my last questions would be, why not just move the city limits? I mean, what keeps us so constrained here? Is it the taxes? I just, like I said, I fail to understand this, and I'm looking at this like zooming out. And I would love to have some answers to those questions. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I'm Robert Mounts, born and raised in Gainesville, Double Gator, K through 12. all that. And when I came back to Gainesville 8 years ago after 45 years in public service, I was in University Park neighborhood in a Florida park in a historic home, and soon became president of that neighborhood association for 3 of the last 4 years. And we fought GNV Rise tooth and nail, and this is part of it. It's a reprise of GNV Rise. That failed, because of public opposition. Proponents of inclusionary zoning in this college town have tried to seize the moral high ground by pointing out the need for affordable housing, segregation, all of these evils in housing that need to be addressed. But our experience in the university neighborhood, right north of the university, all the way to 16th Avenue, and west from 13th Street to 26th Street, was that the problem really was, and the development opportunities were there for luxury student apartments for students, like one lady said. We did a study, Rich Doty is a GIS motor mapper, and we found that over 50% of the University Park neighborhood is now owned by absentee landlords or corporations even. There was about 20 corporations. So, and I agree with the statement that it's not a multifamily. It's not multifamily. The people that want to develop those old properties, those old houses, and build ADUs or build multi-student units are going to, they're going to cater to students. It's not going to produce desegregation. I wish it would, but it just hasn't and it won't. So they don't own the moral high ground here, particularly when the planners admit that one of the purposes here is to allow one of those corporations or absentee landlords to extract wealth from their property. It's not trying to get more housing for the impoverished or for the working poor. It's just not working. And what we have seen is a lot of big box luxury student apartments buildings up and down 13th Street, University Avenue. We've seen local developers buy up lots in Porter's Quarters and turn them into luxury student apartment bungalows. Same thing in Pleasant Street. So they cannot claim the high moral ground in pushing inclusionary zoning to accomplish these goals. What I have advocated for when I was chair of the College Park University Heights Redevelopment Board, as we were winding down, is to put $1 million of that $7 million a year of tax increment funding into a community land trust. Actually build something, put real money against the problem. That hasn't been done. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Rivers up next, and then Diane Deavy.
Yeah, so I'm Adam. I am a homeowner in a northwest neighborhood that's RSF1 zone now, and I actually do support the rezoning proposal to consolidate into a single zone and to allow these 2 to 4 unit developments. I think it's got a lot of positive benefits for our community. One of the key things that's pretty striking, we do have a shortage of housing. We also have a shortage of housing choice. There's a lot of developments primarily outside of the city now of residential single-family subdivisions, or you've got the large-scale student developments, but frankly, there's not a lot of choice in between. So this missing middle that you're talking about really, I think, is important for meeting the needs. Also, the ability to kind of to add more infill development, to kind of have options. I know when I moved here from the San Francisco Bay Area about 5 years ago, wanted to be in the center of town. There was not a lot of kind of like newer, nicer homes that were available that I was interested in. It took a while to find something. So I think this opportunity for redevelopment is good, in that it provides more choice, provides more units, which we need. I also think it's great because it provides opportunities for wealth creation and wealth retention in the community that aren't necessarily provided by other development modes. So one of the things I think is unique about the opportunity to have these 2 to 4 unit developments is it provides possibilities for new sort of small scale single person developers to get like a loan that can be FHA backed and can be, people can actually develop a small duplex in their neighborhood that allows people to be more developing for their neighbors, not just sort of larger developers developing for investors, which I think is great. It also provides the opportunity to with duplexes for people to buy homes where they can live in one side and rent out the other, have that income. And I think there's a lot of positive aspects about it that are good. The other thing I wanted to mention, you mentioned the idea of the brick walls and whether or not that would be useful or not. I think in terms of the consistency of the neighborhood, if you're developing a 4-plex or 2-plex to look like the rest of the homes in the neighborhood, it doesn't make a lot of sense to put a big masonry wall on both sides and kind of highlight that this is something that doesn't fit in the neighborhood. You want it to fit in terms of the look of the neighborhood. So I think that those additional requirements, in addition to raising costs, probably aren't great. All right, thanks.
Great, thank you. Diane Devey next, and then Peggy Carr.
Yeah. Go ahead. Thank you. My name is Diane Devey. I've lived in the Gainesville area since 1982. A lot of things have changed since that time. I came here tonight originally to address the first item on the agenda, 210945, which involves rezoning an area which is not in the city, but inside the city. It's in the county. And I'm very curious as to how you can do that because, seems kind of odd. So I want to know, I assume that you would, if you passed it, you would then request the county to make the change. I'm against the change because we have already a lot of traffic, and that would just introduce a lot more. 13th Street is the main north-south road, which is totally clogged with traffic in far too many of its areas, so we don't need that. But another thing I'd like to mention in connection with absentee owners, I think it's very important to know who they are and where they are, and you could ask your staff to go over the ownership records and identify them and identify the kinds of materials they own. I think that would be very helpful for consideration of the kind that you're doing now. Another thing I'd like to do is to say that a lot of the data that were presented by your staff has been available to them for a long time. Before this meeting, I tried to find everything I could on the internet about what was going on in this meeting, and I couldn't find any of that staff material. Was I just looking in the wrong place, or did you not bother to put it on? It would have been very helpful to me. And the last thing I want to do is to say, please listen to Kim Tanzer. I'm going to thank her for her presentation. I think she has made a very, very good case for no upzoning and indeed for no real changes at all. And others have said here, shortly before we're going to have an entirely new commission, you shouldn't be doing anything. And I have to agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to repeat, this is the first time this has come before the plan board, and it's an information item tonight, so we aren't taking any votes this evening. This is the beginning of the process. It came as a recommendation from the commission, so, yep. Ms. Carr, and then Ms. Melanie Barr will be next.
Chair Sutton and board members, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Again, my name is Peggy Carr. I'm a Gainesville resident and a Gainesville native, an emeritus professor from the University of Florida in landscape architecture, former associate dean of the College of Design, Construction, Planning, and 10-year director of UF's program in the sustainability in the built environment. I'm here to speak against the proposed changes to the comprehensive plan, against the proposed changes to the zoning portion of the Land Development Code, and against the proposed changes to the subdivision portion of the Land Development Code. Without getting into any specifics, I blanketly object to the proposed changes because the premise on which they are based is not only naive, but fundamentally false. These proposals presume that by increasing housing stock, diverse and affordable home ownership for more, if not all, citizens of Gainesville will come. Instead of reaching this goal, the outcome of these changes will simply be more rental property in Gainesville. Given the reality of private property rights, there is no way to guarantee that the proposed changes will lead to increased home ownership. Instead, more of Gainesville will be owned by real estate conglomerates and investors. Instead of a city with 61% renters, as the HR&A study suggested, as home ownership eludes our citizens, look for a city with 75% or even greater rental rate. It is shameful that these proposals are being tendered under the flag of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Instead, they will give carte blanche to developers to eat away at long-standing, stable, single-family neighborhoods that have been the heart and soul of this city since its inception. Only newer and wealthier single-family neighborhoods with strong restrictive covenants in place will be immune. It is the poorer and older neighborhoods that will be forever altered. As this board is well aware, our current land development code allows any property owner the right to pursue a rezoning at any time. The rezoning process provides the public with an opportunity to weigh in on the suitability of the proposal. The changes being proposed here will rob the public of that opportunity. True, the process of public participation may add to the cost of land development, but public participation is at the heart of our democracy, and so it is worth the cost. Finally, let me point out the obvious. The sweeping proposals before you will grant property owners the right to significantly increase development densities that will translate into significantly increased property values. Please deliberate very carefully, recognizing that should these changes be made, they are virtually irreplaceable. I really do hope that you will move or suggest that we have community workshops on this and that this be carefully considered before it's even sent to the City Commission for their consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Barr and then Ms. Tana Silva.
Hello. There was something mentioned about removing single-family future land use category. That's already been done because every single-family property can have a duplex and a garage apartment. So you already don't have single-family. And I don't know if any of you remember that when the City Commission was looking into this, some of the commissioners went to explore how that worked in other towns. And instead of allowing low-income people to live in luxury neighborhoods, they were all bed and breakfast, Airbnbs. So more rich people that can spend $150 a night to live in a fancy neighborhood. And it didn't help that have bicycles. No, they were all coming in cars. Maybe Uber might have dropped off some people. This petition that you're considering tonight, it wants to remove occupancy limits and increase bedroom limits. Who is that helping? Are you saying this is to help low income? Are you still assuming that low income people have 10 children, 7 children? They're still not going to be able to buy property or rent. No landlord's going to put a building up of quadruplex that has 7 bedrooms in each unit. You already can put a triplex, or I should say a duplex with a garage apartment, on any single family lot. Now, if you have an acre, is this proposed petition going to allow 3 quadruplexes on an acre? So a person could go into the Hermitage or by Clear Lake and tear down the house. Some of the houses in the older neighborhoods that are on large lots are in poor condition, and a developer could buy them and tear that down. Would they be able to put up 3 quadruplexes on a lot? If it's an acre. I think that's what would happen, could happen.
So The proposal is to have one building structure with 2 to 4 units per building. One building,
One building with how many units?
2 to 4.
Two?
2 to 4.
Two to
So
four.
8 units. So 8 units.
Two units, 2 units to 4 units. So it's a range. So
Oh,
it's
two 4
right, right, right,
units.
right, right.
Oh, so a quadruplex in every lot. So you're saying instead of a triplex or a duplex with a garage apartment, now all properties can have quadruplexes. And on top of that, you're going to say removing occupancy limits and increase bedroom limits? Who is this? This isn't for families. This is for rental units or Airbnbs. This is, how are you helping low-income people? The developer is going to want to make the most money possible. They're not going to put low-income units into the luxury subdivisions that have 1 and 2 acres. So I think you have to think about the consequences of your actions. We already have lost our single family. Somebody said earlier, or it was written, that this isn't eliminating single family. It's already been eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Tana Silva. Before my time starts, Madam Chair, could I just mention that there's confusion about whether people could call in with their comments. And I tried to check it out through staff, but got no answers. It was
So-
posted as having phone comments for tonight's meeting.
I don't believe that we have phone comments
Right,
any further,
I-
but staff, can you confirm that?
I asked because you
that's
mentioned that last week, that the plan board no longer has
So
phone
when we
comments.
had the workshop
Right,
a couple
I
weeks ago that was
understood-
just
I
via
understood
Zoom,
that.
we did have call-in.
Right, but on the website, it's still posted as having phone comments for tonight's meeting. So I just wanted to bring that up, so. Anyway,
Madam Chair.
so
Oh, sorry.
I
It's the
rushed.
notice of meetings we need to correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we do need to, it sounds like we do need to correct the notice of meetings. We also verified at that workshop, which was via Zoom, so it was, I realize, more inaccessible than these meetings, that the e-comment feature that's available for
Right.
commission meetings
I
is also
understand.
not available for us
Oh,
because
okay.
it requires the clerk's office. So
Right.
we probably do need to update
Yeah,
that just to make
please.
it more clear.
Please do. Anyway, I rushed out the door and forgot my glasses, so here I am. So anyway, I appreciate your questions last week about the comp plan update, especially by the chair. You're right, this can't be a gloss over, copy paste of 10 years ago, and public participation has been almost nil. I appreciate tonight you're noting that the city already did away with single-family zoning with the haphazard distortion of ADUs. This draft contorts elements to fit an ideological agenda that is not taking the city anywhere good, environmentally, economically, or socially. The city itself is raising the cost of living with unaccountable spending and debt and high utility rates, as well as policies like sending UF students with GoPros into small-scale rentals looking for infractions of the International Property Maintenance Code. That can only hurt cost. This proposal is based on inflated population growth figures. UF's plan to cut enrollment isn't included, and false tales of undying Jim Crow laws and racist NIMBYs as the cause of housing unaffordability. City limits have expanded 60% in 30 years, and still census shows low population growth for Gainesville. Middle housing isn't missing in older neighborhoods, and now 3-story triplexes are allowed everywhere. The proposal ignores housing specialists' urgent advice to preserve existing housing stock and boost home ownership. It exacerbates both. It insists instead on new multifamily rental construction everywhere, not homeowners' options. Excuse me. Not homeowners' options. And it incentivizes demolitions. Developers at any scale now are held to little or no environmental regulations or mitigation, or for stormwater infrastructure. Infrastructure is weak in some of these older neighborhoods, but it looks like none of that would be considered in adding more buildings. We see properties lie vacant for years because they cost too much to develop for enough return on investment in upzoning. Splaying out upzoning only disperses development rather than concentrating it. Incremental growth is the way to go, protecting cohesive neighborhoods, trees, green spaces, and predictability. In Pleasant Street, despite its being a historic district, reduced setbacks are accelerating the loss of trees, yards, and gardens, even for large $450,000 houses with only 2 occupants. The city has lot splits already, and using black wealth and heirs property as an excuse to just plain reprehensible. Displacement has occurred exactly because of speculation and rising sales prices. This proposal would worsen the chances for new home buyers, especially as corporate investors pay cash above asking price. And I hope that there are other details, but I don't have time to go through them. And I'm sure you'll be bringing this all back, and I appreciate the time for you all to listen to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last card that I had. Is there anyone that hasn't spoken that would like to? Yep. Give her a second to clean the podium and just state your name for the record when you start. Just a second.
I was just sitting there thinking, here we are struggling again up at the city hall, struggling again up at city hall, Usually it's our city commissioners. This time we have a chance to come before the plan board and see if you all can help us make some changes, positive changes. Because when we go to the school board, it's usually a whole lot of negative change. And I'm praying, and I'm sitting back there trying not to cry out, because I live over in Porter's Quarters, and I see what's happening there. And if you don't understand what's really going on, call me, or either just drive through or walk through, and you'll find out what's happening at Porter's Quarters. And it comes back to, the last name is Kofi, Andrew Kofi and his daddy, David Kofi, who are already rich and wants to be more rich, but has no moral level in terms of the people who live in these black neighborhoods. And I'm not talking only about Porter's Quarters, but it's going to change what's happening over in Spring Hill, Sugar Hill, all the black neighborhoods, Pleasant Street, it's already gone. So we talk about gentrification, now we're talking about studification, now it's almost talking about displacement, because that's what's happening over in Porter's. Eileen Harris, who has a forum tomorrow up at the Thomas Center, being honored by someone from the University of Florida, Portia Moore, if you want to hear. But Kofi is building high-rises right in front of her house. She's sick from the dust. We get that every day from Argos on Depot Avenue, 4 o'clock in the morning with the tractors. So I guess I'm talking about a moral issue. Forget, I can't even talk about the land anymore. I'm just hoping that y'all have a moral level where you can really, really think about what's going to happen, what's happening right now. But think about where it's going to be 5 to 10 years from now. So I'm advocating that you step back a minute. We need more workshops, and more workshops. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Mr. Mims, were you hoping to speak? We're reaching the end of public comment on the information item. I saw you come in late. You don't have to fill out a card. It's okay. We know you. Welcome back. Yeah, as soon as she's done cleaning.
I'll try to be brief.
It's been a while, Mr. Mims.
My apologies. Yeah, it's September 2018 was my last plan board member as a member of staff. It was a
Take your seat.
Privilege and mostly a pleasure to be here. Always a privilege, not always a pleasure, but in the end good. And so, I haven't been real close to a lot of the things that have gone down the last several years. I know there's a comp plan initiative going on. Nothing has been adopted with the new comprehensive plan. That's sort of my initial question.
No, not yet.
Okay, and is what is here, which is rather dramatic, is that part of the comp plan update that was sort of consultant-driven?
So this is actually separate from the comp plan discussion. This is a different recommendation. It's confusing because it is the same consultant doing both things for the city, but this is a separate issue than the bigger comp plan
Okay.
rewrite.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I don't think it was mentioned, but my name is Dean Mims, and I live in the city of Gainesville. So just, I'll try and keep it brief. I probably have officially 3 minutes. I'll just try and be brief. Has a case study been done? Have you considered doing that? There are a lot of moving parts to this proposal, and it's, it's kind of a big proposal. Case study locally?
This is an information item.
Yeah, it's just an
Information
item.
item.
Nothing's happening at this point. We're just started.
Just a suggestion for staff, that might be some value in that, and some neighborhood workshops as we're hopefully moving out of COVID. There's more opportunity for direct interaction with the public. Yes, it seems to be there's an assumption that by providing more housing, you're providing affordable housing. I'm not sure that that's entirely clear. I do think Gainesville has had some real successes in modifying some things in the past. When I think about past successes, there are many. In terms of development design, the standards that are with this, I realize this is largely, it's at an initial stage here, but I think that the city cannot do enough to address compatibility. And I think it's of concern to me that some of the compatibility measures are being stricken. I'll try and go in order, get back to the order of this thing right at the beginning. It's a need for definitions, small scale multifamily. I think it's kind of understood, but if there's not a definition, there should be one. Definition of affordability that's at least pursuant to what's talked about here. Very important. I think in a future report, it would be good to have a link to the study that has an acronym that I'm sure you all are familiar with, that I am not. It's inclusionary, affordable, whatever, but I didn't see a link to it in here. I have a creative suggestion that might be helpful. Given the magnitude of the changes and the fact that it's basically turning residential zoning, single family, on its head, I would suggest that the city consider starting with amending just the Urban Transect 1, the U1, and see how that goes. I know as a resident of Gainesville that doesn't live that far from the University of Florida, I'm among others that were alarmed by the trajectory of the accessory dwelling units ordinance, which I believe is in full force and effect, and I don't think it's had much of a test. That to me is de facto multiple family housing. The way it ended up after it got through the city commission was no owner occupancy requirement and 3 units, and not particularly evident or well thought out, I think, compatibility standards, design standards. So I would like to see how the ADUs are working. I think a lot of people are very open to the idea of one ADU and, but working with what we have, and let's see how that goes. But I really think that the U1 might be worth exploring just for this and see how that goes, because nobody knows the result of some changes. And I could look at any given residential street and go, where are you going to fit that in there, and how's that going to work with the neighbors, and is 5 feet enough? I think probably not. There are a lot of issues when you go into an existing place. Will the developer be required to put in sidewalks on the numerous streets that do not have sidewalks? What's asked of the developer? And actually, I was a little puzzled by the explanation was about provide that options that the homeowners may choose at their discretion. I don't think we're necessarily talking about homeowners here. I think we're talking property owners. This could be a corporate conglomerate from another state. I know this is an aspect of affordable housing crunch around the country where you have these large moneyed interests that go up and just snatch up single-family homes. I think we might be ripe for the picking for people speculating with this. A little puzzled about the occupancy language, removing it, that needs to be examined. I don't know what you do about 73,000 students, if that's the right thing. I love students, I was one. It is a large number. We seem to put out a lot of mostly high-end product for students. I see students mentioned in the text. I wonder, what about workforce housing? Bedroom limit, I'm not studied enough to know what the impact would be from going to 2.75 to 3 as a multiplier. Needs to be looked at. The development compatibility really needs to be looked at. I wasn't sure why U1 was stricken in there from building height and massing. On the positive note, I would like to say that I was pleased to see that there's no proposal to go beyond 3 stories, and if I'm correct, not under any circumstances by what's here. I'm sorry?
I believe it's 3
No,
stories.
3
and you have a
stories.
pitched roof.
I saw 3 in the
Is
table.
what the current
And you know,
standard is.
that's
And Mr. Mims, if you wouldn't mind just
wrapping it up.
Yep.
Okay. I'll just keep it short, but thank you for the opportunity to comment. I could probably say, you know, a lot more, but I would like to, you know, be apprised of any future workshops on this, and thank you.
Okay, this is the first time that we're hearing this, so we aren't taking a vote tonight, so you all will have more opportunities. Ms. Bauer, if you'd like to come up.
Good evening, thank you. Like Tana, I had run over when I couldn't call. I am a former planner for 3 Pinellas municipalities. I live 7 blocks due east in a home built by the Home Builders Affordable Housing Program in 1997. I'm the second owner of that house. I have a $400 mortgage. So I was blissfully unaware of the affordable housing crisis before 2018 when Tana alerted us to the fact that following an affordable housing workshop where commissioners had said they were going to collect and analyze data and research solutions and formulate a plan with the community. They still have no plan, but weeks later, the staff brought an ordinance to them that redefines single-family zoning to, as you know, include duplexes, triplexes, multiplexes, ADUs, bungalow courts, and live-work units with an office or store on the ground floor. And so these were based on presumptions that the neighbors had, these beliefs that the neighbors had, that the mayor had, that single-family zoning is responsible for our segregation of neighborhoods, that black people want to get out of their black neighborhoods into white ones, but single-family zoning is preventing them from doing so. And I'm sorry, I'm just a little rushed and didn't read my notes. And no matter how many experts from the university, nationally renowned, world-renowned, came in and said, no, it's not the zoning that has resulted in the segregated neighborhoods. It's more things like deed restrictions and redlining. Or building, just letting builders build what they want, where they want, is not going to result in affordable housing. And for these reasons, supply and demand doesn't work here for these reasons. They just won't listen. And although we packed the room in November and they abandoned it, we knew it was coming back. And it came back first as the ADU thing, and now it's back again. We need you to listen. You know this is going to be a big issue in the elections this year. Please give us time to get somebody on that commission who listens and is going to stop this destruction, especially of porters in the historically black neighborhoods. You see what's going on there with this upzoning. So please, please do what you can to help save our neighborhoods by not doing anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. I believe everyone who's here to speak on this item has spoken. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward on this item? Okay, with that, I'm going to bring it back to the board for discussion. We aren't taking a vote, but we'll be giving staff hopefully some feedback. And we have all of your contact information if you fill out a card, so we'll ask them to keep you informed when this does come back. Mr. Hawkins.
I'm confused on the vote. Do our rules prohibit us from taking a vote? I mean, if we have consensus on direction to provide to staff, like go generally this direction or that direction, I would assume it'd be helpful to do it through a motion. Is there a reason we can't do that?
Mr. Persons, do you have thoughts on that?
No, I mean, that's fine. I think like especially it'd be helpful if there is consensus on the board about, recommendations.
For the benefit of the board, my goal as folks talk is to try to find where consensus is and see if I can make a motion that would get, majority support. If we can't do that, that's fine too. But I would love for the meeting to end with more concrete direction for staff rather than less concrete direction for staff.
We always appreciate that.
Okay, you want to kick things off with your thoughts?
I was gonna wait.
Okay. I don't have other lights on, so feel free to.
I have a laundry list, but I'll go through it pretty quickly, I think. One is on the occupancy limit, which is for rental properties, right? If you're near the university, only a certain number of people can occupy a rental home. Seems to me like a separate issue, and I know that was extremely hard fought when it was adopted by the commission in the late 90s. So I think that definitely needs to be workshopped, especially with folks like UPNA and other stakeholders. But I also would think it'd be a separate petition than this. So that's my thought on occupancy limit, is it should be split off and focus with stakeholders.
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I did. It might be helpful for the discussion. I think one of the speakers tonight had talked about breaking everything out. That's our full intention, because this is complicated and because there might be some, aspects that both the planning board and ultimately the city commission may want to support, may not want to support. Our intent is when we actually bring this back for you to vote on, we're going to break everything out so you can take separate votes on everything. So I think to Member Hawkins' point about the occupancy, that would be an example of that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Person. That's helpful. A second issue is the bedroom limit in the UF context zone. There's a trend in student family housing to go from what was popular when I was an undergraduate, which is like 4 bedroom, 4 baths, to 5 5s, to 6 6s, to 7 7s. And the occupancy limit restrains that. Sorry, the bedroom limit multiplier restrains that, and I think it's a really good policy. Because I think if we build a lot of student housing today that's 7 7s, 8 8s, 9 9s, it's an extremely inflexible housing type. It creates leasing problems where you can get roommates with individual leases that don't know each other, and it's just a recipe for conflict that we don't have a housing type that can be useful for generations in the future. So I get nervous about that. I would like us to not change the compatibility standards. Whatever we end up calling single-family zoning, if we make changes to it, I still think that within 100 feet of that zone, 3 stories is a good limit. I wouldn't like to see buildings higher than 3 stories immediately adjacent to areas that are developed as single-family homes, or duplexes and triplexes, et cetera. With the core idea of changing housing types in single-family zoning, the big problem that I see with that under the way we currently review applications is we don't ever connect applications to develop land with existing lots on a plat. So for example, if you were to look at a subdivision plat and talk about replacing an existing unit with a quadruplex, you might be able to imagine that it would somehow fit in. Like there's right, like that's not a completely unreasonable thing to think about. Under the way we currently process applications, though, somebody who owns property can submit a site plan for multiple properties that may or may not be adjacent to one another, and propose development that doesn't relate to those lots. So you could end up with suburban style apartment complexes, for example, buildings arranged around a parking lot, that style of development, where the surrounding typology was single family homes. And I don't think that's the intent of the proposal, but I know our review process, and I look at applications that come through for multifamily, and I know that that's how we review applications. We need to address that if we want to go into a direction where we allow building types, more building types in residential zoning districts. I think the specific change that we need is to require that the unit of land we always use to process an application is a lot. And by lot, I mean a lot that's on a subdivision plat or created by a minor subdivision or created by a lot split, and that all the metrics, setbacks are from lot lines, density is based on the lot area, all the metrics derive from that lot. And that will avoid getting an extreme, a development typology that's very different from single family homes. I still don't know, right? We may disagree as to whether, we may not ultimately think that a quadruplex is right for neighborhoods, but at least with that change to the code, entertaining that idea is going to lead to less really obvious inconsistent development types. The other big concern that I have, and this is super big, I don't know how we get over this without a lot of work, but you look at what's purple on that map, and there's a lot of land in the city that's not like anything else, right? You know, if you walk these areas, they don't look alike. They don't feel alike. The roads aren't the same width. The lots aren't the same size. The price of the housing is not the same. I don't think that a one-size-fits-all solution is going to work. I think we need to do a little bit more thinking and get to a solution that's more nuanced. There may be locations here where only single-family houses make sense. Maybe somewhere only duplexes make sense. Maybe somewhere the full range to quadruplexes make sense. I don't know that, and I think that a lot more deep thought needs to go in to kind of get to that answer. And we're not going to have the same answer for all the geographic area in the city. The last two things that I'll mention, one, it kind of responds to Dean Mim's comments about the amount of data that we have. I don't have a sense, and I haven't read the exclusionary housing study, which I do believe that staff emailed us, but I know that I have not read it. I don't have a sense of how many units we currently have, how many we think we need, on what timeline, how many units this proposal would create, right? I think we need to get a sense of that. If we have data that shows us a target, let's kind of look and see whether these changes undershoot it, overshoot it, hit it just right, so that we kind of sort of know if it's about creating the ability to build units, we should have some data that sort of tells us where we're going. And then the last thing is, I'm totally okay with the procedural changes to lot splits. I don't have any concerns with that. I think those are ideas that, in my understanding, match our practice. So I actually think those are okay.
Thank you. Let me see, who's number 4? Is that Mr. Hirsch? Was that you?
My comments are a lot less technical than Board Member Hawkins. I think the illusion that this is going to create some kind of equitable development is very overstated. I can see that this change, while it may be needed in some areas, is going to really compound upon basically where the money trail is. It's going to follow where the density already is, where all of the amenities already are, where the university already is. So to make it a blanket change, I agree. It's going to cause more issues, I believe, than any good that's going to come from it. I'm a proponent of doing this in a phased way, where it really addresses the needs where they currently are. There are some areas that need increased densities. There are some areas that can probably do without increased density, quite frankly. And if there's a way to do this in a phased way, because I'm also concerned that the gentleman that spoke, one of the earlier speakers that left, I'm very concerned about the infrastructure impact. So I don't know if we're going to incorporate any traffic studies or traffic impact studies. I think that's very important to know, because I think that we're already in a somewhat of a traffic crisis in some areas of the town. So to compound that is going to be an issue, because we have some very real infrastructure barriers to where we can increase the infrastructure. There's only a handful of north and south roads, a handful of east and west roads, and to add any more to those issues without addressing that first and knowing what that impact could be detrimental as well. And then it's been brought up a couple of times, and I don't know if this is part of the plan, but the community workshops, I think that's going to be really important, because I think the understanding of what this impact is for certain areas of town is going to differ from the understanding of other areas of town. And it's going to affect all the areas of town. So I think that we should definitely be having some kind of community workshops, and to really take time to help people understand how this is going to affect their area specifically, because at the end of the day, people really only care about their areas. But this is something that we're going to be affecting in the entire city. But the different understandings about how this is going to affect their particular areas is going to be different. So I'm hoping that, is there plans for community workshops?
I mean, I would say that's a commission question, I believe. Yeah. So what I would suggest, because I've heard a couple of members sort of talk about maybe larger issues than maybe like some of the code that we're talking about. It might be worthwhile for the plan board, if there are either individually as members, writing down your thoughts, and we can certainly share those with the commission, especially if there are, issues about, well, we should do more workshops, or, well, we should, do a phased approach, or we should, kind of go in, potentially different directions than we've gotten from the commission. I think that would be good feedback for them, and whether there's a consensus on the board to do something like that, or as individual members, you're certainly welcome to provide that feedback. I mean, that would be good feedback for the commission to hear.
Okay. That's all I had.
Mr. Ackerman.
I just have a few kind of generic comments into the early stage of this. I agree with Mr. Hawkins. Oh, I'm sorry. I agree with Mr. Hawkins that we should have more data. I'm generally in favor of the goals that have been articulated, but I'm not comfortable that we have enough information to know whether what we're proposing will actually move us towards achieving those goals. The issue of infrastructure doesn't bother me very much, because actually the goal of adding density in areas that already have amenities should have the effect of reducing traffic, because one of the key things that I think we're aiming for is having more affordable housing, workforce housing, is that you will be able to move around, and ideally, if you move in from Levy County and start, you can lose a car and walk to work and do a whole lot of things in that way. You will actually reduce some of your traffic. I do know that right now developers are, with new buildings, they're adding parking structures, and most of them are underutilized, meaning people are leaving their cars at home. And I know anecdotally of half a dozen UF students who just park them and forget them, and come back at the end of the quarter or the semester to get them. But I would like more data. I think that's the key thing for me, is that I would like to know exactly where we are, rather than a kind of a generic purple blur. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other lights, so I'm gonna share some of my thoughts on this. I have considerable concerns about infrastructure, and not so much necessarily just the roads and the traffic, but the utility infrastructure, as well as stormwater and the requirements that the city has if you're putting in multifamily for having stormwater on site. It's very difficult to meet the city requirements currently, and so if you start trying to have to do that on a residential lot and with very minimal lot sizes required, it's not gonna be possible. I mean, I think my big concern is that, thinking through the technicality of what's gonna be required for these things, I mean, even with the ADUs, GRU's decided that every unit, even an attached unit, has to have its own water meter and clean out. That all takes space. You have to have easements around those things. If you start putting 4 units on a small lot, you've got to have 4 water meters, 4 clean outs. You're probably going to be upgrading a lot of electrical infrastructure. So right now, you know, when you're in a subdivision, the transformers are placed because there's a certain number of feeds for a certain number of houses. When you're adding more units and they need more electrical connections, you're going to have to add more transformers. You got to figure out where that's going to go. Where is that utility easement going to go? Are we going to require these new developments to have underground electric in a similar way that we do for multifamily in other places? Because if we do that, it changes the whole system. You can't feed the existing houses through overhead and then just add a new transformer and serve the new ones with underground. It doesn't work that way. I'm not an electrical engineer, but I coordinate with them on development all the time. And when you make something underground, you have to convert the whole system. And I just know that it's not as easy to make a house served by overhead, convert it to underground as you think it would be. So I think there's a lot of utility issues specifically that this is going to be a challenge for. I think that we should talk to some of the GRU people before we think that we're going to go into platted neighborhoods that were planned with certain size water lines, certain size sewer lines, and essentially transformer spacing to meet the density that was proposed by the subdivision to begin with. It's going to be a significant challenge to upgrade those utility systems to accommodate this. And I'm not saying that every lot's going to become a quadruplex, but even just one lot becoming a quadruplex has a ripple effect on everyone else and their utility services. I don't know the building code, but I would imagine some of these may also require fire lines and sprinkler systems. That's going to have an effect on people's water pressure in the neighborhood. So there's a lot of utility issues I have questions about here. And that's, I work in engineering, so that's what my mind goes to, but I think we're just not considering that, and it could be a big problem for these existing neighborhoods to add that demand. So stormwater is a concern. What are our requirements going to be? Is it going to have to meet the current code? Are we going to make exceptions? I'd like to hear from Public Works how they think that this would work. Are we going to charge TMPA fees? I imagine that we would, as far as the transportation system. We didn't really deal with parking requirements. Right now, the city's pretty lax on letting you not provide the parking, if you don't want to. And, we've seen in certain areas there isn't very much demand for parking, but I think that that's going to be a concern, particularly in some of these older neighborhoods that have narrower streets if we aren't providing parking on these sites. And we did talk about that with ADUs. I think it should be discussed here in a similar way. I'm actually okay with removing the wall requirement, the masonry wall. I think that makes perfect sense. We should get rid of the wall requirement. I'm in favor of keeping the bedroom limits. Occupancy limit is totally a separate issue. I would have to be convinced that that should be changed. One other thing, and this is just through side conversations with planning, I would like us to also, for messing with minor subdivisions, can we talk about the minor subdivision vacation process? Because I've dedicated a lot of time to figuring out what that would be, and I think we should document it if you need to vacate a minor subdivision. But overall, I agree it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think we need to look at different areas. I think the utility infrastructure and the stormwater are of particular concern to me, how we're going to handle those things if we're going to allow, more development in these neighborhoods. Any other thoughts from anybody else? Mr. Hawkins, do you want to take a stab at putting a motion together, or do we just want to let staff kind of run with the existing comments here?
Let me take a stab at it and see if it gets a majority. And if it doesn't, I won't try to amend it. We'll just see if we can get something that folks like.
Sure, Mr. Mounds.
It's one thing to get individual feedback from the members, but I don't think you have, I'm not sure the assistant city attorney is here, but do you have the authority to take a vote or pass a motion on
We
this?
can make a recommendation for what we'd like them to bring back. It's not gonna go to the city commission from here, I don't think. We're just telling them what we wanna see come back when we would be voting on it in the future.
Yeah, it's just-
Direction to staff.
Right, just trying to give us a
Mhm.
clear idea where everybody is.
Yeah.
I just would give direction to staff, and see what comes back.
What do y'all want to do?
My view is they've got a bunch of notes. We expect to see them back again, and if they miss what we've said, we'll let them know.
Okay.
I mean, we're at the earliest stage of this. There's just no reason to limit much of anything, I don't think.
I would say from staff perspective, I mean, I think the comments tonight were very good. I think Member Hawkins' suggestions, I think, make a lot of sense to me. I would, and we can resend out the inclusionary zoning report again, and we'll make sure it's part of the backup when this comes back to you for further discussion. Because there is a lot of data in there. It might be helpful for the board to take a look at that as well. And yeah, I think the comments are great. I don't think we need a motion, but if the board so chooses, we'll be happy to do that as well.
Would it come back to us before it had been vetted in public meetings in the community?
We're at this point, we're going to come back to the plan board.
But we do some community workshopping prior to that.
I would, our plan at this point, because the commission has given us clear direction that they want this to go through the process, we're planning on having meetings with you all until a recommendation comes forward with the commission. That said, I think, as I said, if the members want to, write the commission or request, that we do workshops or what have you, that would be appropriate, and the commission can give the manager direction and give me direction for that. But right now, we're working off of the commission direction from their January meeting, which was take this forward, take it to the planning board, work through that, and bring it back to us.
I don't think that's gonna work, but.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a.
Yeah, I don't think
like
you're
a bad
gonna get
idea.
anything back from the plan board in time to meet that schedule. It's apparent that I think, and I'm sorry but it's apparent that we need to have way more discussion about this. And I think we need to have workshops. And I mean, happy to talk to commissioners, but would probably work fine if you did too.
I think that some of the things, you may be able to bring us just individual text amendments to address some of the minor subdivision, lot split, some of those things, you might be able to move forward easily. But to change a majority of the city's zoning and eliminate a land use category that applies to the majority of where voters live, I don't think is a good idea for the city commission without some community workshops. So it's an election year, and there are a lot of voters that are going to be affected by this, and I think they should consider that.
Okay, are we done here?
Yeah, I'm looking at the folks that I would need to vote on the motion, and none of them seem like they're interested in voting on anything. So I'm cool.
Well, we already
right.
promised.
I'll decline.
We promised people we would not vote.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming out. This is the very beginning. We've got, thank you for your input tonight. Staff will be bringing things back to us. and watch the plan board agendas for bits and pieces of this moving forward. If you did put your email on this as well, I think staff can keep you posted. So
Yeah, we'll
some of you did put your email or, on these forms, and if you would like to add it, I'm going to pass it down to Andrew.
yeah, we'll make an email list serve and send it out.
Thank you. Are you all okay to jump into the next item? Do we want to take a 5-minute break?
Take 5 minutes.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break, let people run to the restroom, let people leave the room, and we'll reconvene at 8:37 to get through the remaining items. Into the record, and they'll find their way back for the presentations.
Who did we lose? Oh, James. Oh, yeah. Gotcha. There's James.
And Josh, too.
Yeah.
Oh, Madam Chair.
Yes.
At the end now.
They're, I don't think they're hitting the button. This is plan.
Well, we'll go ahead. We do have our two newest planners on the line.
Oh,
And so
okay.
at some point I'd like to introduce them so they can
Okay.
say hi.
Do you want to do that now so they don't have to stay on until the end of the meeting?
I think we're waiting for them to perhaps join the Zoom meeting.
Oh, okay.
Is Fometta on?
You just let us know, because we can't see Zoom. Maybe we'll do
We can do the item and
the
then.
first property and then see if they're on between.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. Can we read the next item of new business into the record, please?
Okay. New business, item number 210944, petition PB-22-00019 LUC. City of Gainesville, the applicant requests to amend the City of Gainesville future land use map from Alachua County Commercial to City of Gainesville Urban Mixed Use, which would allow for 60 units per acre, located south of the landing at Bivens Arms Development, south of the existing city limit on Southwest 13th Street. And I will be doing the presentation for that. All right. For the record, my name is Juan Castillo, planner for the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you this evening is a request for an amendment to the future land use map, and it's the first of two related petitions, the second being for the rezoning of the same property, which I'll discuss in the upcoming presentation. This property is currently going through the annexation process, which is the impetus to this request. The subject property is 0.69 acres in size and is located south of the landing at Bivens Arms Development, south of the existing city boundary on Southwest 13th Street. Currently, the property is vacant and has a land use of Alachua County Commercial, which allows the development of commercial activities and uses. The proposal before you this evening is to change the existing land use to Urban Mixed Use, UMU, which will introduce a residential/mixed-use component to the site at a density of 60 units per acre, with the option of an additional 20 units per acre via the special use permit process. Staff has reviewed the request before you this evening and has found that it meets the review criteria stated in our land development code for land use amendment. This includes consistency with the comprehensive plan, compatibility with surrounding land uses, and support for urban infill and redevelopment. The full list and account of how each review criteria is met is found in your report. Thank you so much, and I am here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board for staff? Is there an applicant or landowner on this at all? No.
The city, the landowner is here tonight. This is part of the, the property is currently being annexed into the city. And part of it is we're assigning the appropriate city land use and zoning for.
Sometimes there's a consultant involved in that process, sometimes there isn't, so. Okay, great, thank you for being here. Mr. Hawkins.
I move approval of petition PB-22-000019 LUC.
Second. Okay, we'll give it to Sophia. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. We'll move on to the next item.
Alright. The next item is 210945, and that's petition PB-22-00018 ZON. City of Gainesville applicant requests to rezone property from Alachua County Highway-oriented business to City of Gainesville Urban Transit Zone U7 with a density of 50 dwelling units per acre, 60 dwelling units per acre with bonus. Located south of the landing at Bivens Arms Development, south of the existing city limit on Southwest 13th Street. And I will be doing the presentation for this item. As soon as I can get this up. Well, again, for the record, my name is Juan Castillo, planner for the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you is the second petition of related to this property and is a request for a rezoning. Currently, the property has Alachua County zoning for highway-oriented business, which implements their commercial and tourist/entertainment policies of their comprehensive plan. The existing zoning allows for uses such as medical clinics, restaurants and bars, hotels and motels, and retail sales. However, it does not have a residential component. The proposal before you this evening is to change the existing Alachua County highway-oriented business zoning to Transit Zone Urban 7. U7 would allow for the existing uses to continue along with incorporating a mixed-use residential element. Furthermore, U7 would establish transit zone design regulations designed to promote more urban and pedestrian-friendly development. Staff has reviewed the request before you and has found that it meets the review criteria stated in our Land Development Code for rezoning. This includes compatibility of permitted uses and allowing densities with existing developments, the proposed zoning district in relation to surrounding properties, additional review criteria for transit zones. The full list and account of how each review criteria is met is found in your report. Thank you, and I am here and available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay, not seeing any. Would you like to speak to this item at all? No? Okay. Bringing it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair, but the next item on the agenda is 22-18, but I think the presentation said 22-17. So I'm wondering if I got them mixed up.
Oh, wrote the number on the.
Nope, sorry, that's.
Which one's correct?
That's 2218 on your agenda is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. I move approval of petition PB-22-18 ZON.
Okay, do we have a second? Mr. Ackerman, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Mr. Persons, do you have the planners ready to introduce themselves, or do we want to go on to the next?
Oh, I sure do, Madam
Great.
Chair. So this is always my absolute favorite part of my job, is to introduce people that are much better at me than at this job. So we have actually two new planners in the department. The first planner is Meadow Lewis. Meta is has actually been with the city for a little while. She worked most recently in the Housing Community Development Department and joins us. I believe she's on. Meta, do you want to say a couple words?
Good evening. My name is Fenetta Lewis, and I am a planner, or formerly was the housing program coordinator for the housing division. Excited to be here, and thank you.
All right, thank you. And our next planner is Dan Zhu. Dan came to us from Marion County, where she was a senior planner. Most recently, we actually have gotten a really good, probably a really bad reputation in Marion County for stealing all of their good talent. But Dan comes to us, and I think she's been with us for maybe close to a month. Welcome, Dan. You want to say a couple words?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Zhu with Sustainable Development. It's great to be here. Looking forward to working together.
Great. Thank you both for being with us tonight. Hopefully we'll see you presenting items here before long.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the last two items then. Mr. Castillo, if you can read it into the record.
Sure thing, Madam Chair. Item number 210946, petition PB-22-00020 LUC. City of Gainesville is the applicant. Requests to amend the City of Gainesville future land use map for 3 properties from Alachua County Commercial and Institutional/Medical to City of Gainesville Urban Mixed Use with a density of 60 units per acre, located at the intersection of Southwest 13th Street and Southwest Williston Road. I will be doing that presentation. Again, for the record, my name is Juan Castillo, planner for the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you this evening is a request for an amendment to the future land use map, and it's the first of 2 related petitions for this property, the second being for the rezoning of this property, which I'll discuss in the upcoming presentation. This property is currently going through the annexation process, which is the impetus to this request. The subject property is about 8.99 acres in size, and is located at the intersection of Southwest Williston Road and Southwest 13th Street. Currently, the property is improved with the Shands Rehabilitation Center and has a land use of Alachua County Commercial and Institutional/Medical. The combination allows for the development of commercial activities as well as allowing for a medical component. The proposal before you this evening is to change the existing land use to Urban Mixed Use, UMU, which will introduce a residential/mixed-use component to the site at a density of 60 units per acre, with the option of an additional 20 units per acre via the special use permit process. Staff has reviewed the request before you and has found that it meets the review criteria stated in our Land Development Code for land use amendment. This includes consistency with a comprehensive plan, compatibility with surrounding land uses, and support for urban and infill redevelopment. The full list and account of how each review criteria is met is found in the report. Thank you, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board on this item? Okay, and there's no one left from the public, so we'll look for a comment or a motion.
Madam Chair, I move the Plan Board recommend approval of petition PB-22-00020 LUC.
Okay, a second from Mr. Ackerman. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Mr. Castillo, the next item, please.
The next item, Madam Chair, is 210947. That's petition PB-22-0017 ZON. City of Gainesville is the applicant. Requests to rezone 3 properties from Alachua County zoning highway-oriented business, HB, and hospital/medical, HM, to City of Gainesville Urban Transit Zone U7 with a density of 50 dwelling units per acre with 60 dwelling units per acre with bonus, located at the intersection of Southwest 13th Street and Southwest Williston Road. And I will be doing the presentation.
Glad there's more people coming.
I was just messaging the planners that we need to spread the wealth a little bit more.
Yes, I was telling Lawrence that the other day.
For the record, my name is Juan Castillo, planner for the Department of Sustainable Development. I'm sure you'll be glad not to hear that again tonight. The item before you this evening is a request to rezone the property, and it's the second of 2 related petitions. The first one being the land use amendment, which we just discussed. The item before you this evening is, again, the request for the rezoning well, let me backtrack. Currently, the property has an Alachua County zoning of highway-oriented business and hospital medical. The highway-oriented business zoning implements Alachua County's comprehensive plan commercial and tourist entertainment policies, while the hospital medical zoning district implements the institutional medical, and office medical designations on the Alachua County future land use map. The existing zoning allows for uses such as medical clinics, restaurants and bars, hotels and motels, retail sales, and of course, medical with a residential over commercial component. The proposal before you this evening is to change the existing Alachua County highway-oriented business zoning and hospital medical to Transit Zone Urban 7. U7 would allow for the existing uses to continue, along with incorporating a more robust mixed-use residential element. Furthermore, U7 would establish transit zone design regulations designed to promote more urban and pedestrian-friendly development. Staff has reviewed the petition, the request before you, and has found that it meets the review criteria found in our land development code. This includes compatibility with the permitted uses and allowed intensity with existing developments, as well as the proposed district in relation to surrounding properties. The full list of an account of how each review criteria is met is found in the staff report. And again, I'm here and available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on this petition?
Madam Chair, I move the Plan Board recommend approval of petition PB-22-000170N.
Second. Oh, we'll give it to Sophia. I'm sure wealth.
That's fine.
All
Trying to
those.
move this along.
Yep. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Is there any other information that we need to get from staff?
I have two announcements or 2 things to just bring up. One, 2 weeks ago, we went live with our new land management and permitting software called it's permitgnv.com. I definitely encourage the board, if you ever use Citizen Access, the old Enterprise Citizen Access, when it was up, which wasn't always up, that is now defunct, and we have permitgnv.com. So I definitely encourage you to take a look. It's got all of our legacy data, information going back, from into the 80s. We've all pulled all of that forward. It's searchable. It has has all of the department's information, so planning, building, and code enforcement information in there. So take a look and let us know what you think. Then the second thing I wanted to mention, we have been leading an effort at the city with several other departments on locating a new urgent care clinic in East Gainesville. We have been working with UF Health on a piece of property that they own, which is near the Cornerstone campus, former GTech. And the commission just earlier this afternoon allocated $2.25 million of ARPA money which will match the county's contribution of the same amount. So UF will be building an urgent care clinic, and then we've been working with UF on the design. So it will also include the an RTS transfer station on the property, and space for the community resource paramedicine program, as well as potential space for additional sort of medical services there, and potentially if there's a vendor comes along, a grocery store space is also there. The only problem with all of that is that the zoning doesn't allow it. So that's all to say that we will be bringing forward a city-initiated zoning change for all of those things, probably in the next month or two, to the planning board. So I just wanted to give you a heads up.
So we have the ability to really muck something up.
Absolutely. So
Well, we'll
that's
just
it.
make a recommendation to the city commission anyway, so they've made up their mind, it sounds like.
Madam Chair, if I may, really quickly, I know that last time we discussed an amendment to the meeting date from March 24th.
Yes.
2022. I haven't sent out the little doodle scheduler as of yet, but I'm looking at potentially doing March 31st. if
That's
that
what
would
we
work.
had mentioned, is maybe bumping it back a week, since there shouldn't be conflicts with the room that day.
Everybody's going somewhere but me.
If that works out, I think most of the people that were on, that evening were okay with it.
Okay.
And there's a couple of other people here that have children that might appreciate that move as well.
Also, just a heads up, another item that we discussed was holding the elections for vice chair. So that will potentially be coming up on that meeting as well.
Okay. Do we need to elect a new chair as well, or is that, we're just off cycle with the vice chair because Christian left? Do you know?
We
Because
could
normally,
claim you chair for another
because
term.
I'm
I'd be
open
happy with
to
that.
doing both positions, I just don't know if we're off schedule and it's just because
We're way off schedule.
Yeah, I think we're off schedule, so if it makes sense to do them both, I think we should do them both.
Okay, that's good.
Mr. Castillo, so when we have that item on the agenda, would you provide us backup that lists the length of each member's term and whether they have served in those capacities before? So that we can, if we want to make a decision to pick most experienced or to give the next person the line of shot, so we can does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine.
We used to include a sheet that had our attendance and the term, when our terms ended.
It had when we'd been appointed and then when the term was up on that. We used to get that sheet every month.
Yeah,
Oh.
that would be useful, because people ask me all the time when they can.
We'll get with the
When they
clerk's
can
office.
replace you.
Yeah, we'll get with the clerk's office on that.
You've been here a while.
Madam Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes.
We're talking about agendas. I think we have not yet approved some minutes from the fall. Because we canceled the meetings. We lost
didn't have a
quorum in
quorum.
November and we never picked up those meeting minutes.
I'm
I
sorry?
was gonna say, we can research it.
Okay. I could be wrong, but that was, when I looked at the backup for the meeting today, I was like, where are all those minutes from the fall?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
well-
thought that we had a couple backed up as well.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I believe that we had one meeting where we kind of did like a mass approval of minutes, and I believe it was incorporated that, but we'll go ahead and do more research and get back to you on that. Also, I'll be bringing the minutes for the workshop that we held, the virtual workshop, which there were no voting items there, but just for your reference.
Great. So it sounds like the March meeting, we're going to try to move to the 31st unless anyone is opposed to that. And Mr. Castillo, can you just confirm that date if it works.
I will
think
connect
there's
with-
general consensus that it'll work.
Yeah, we'll connect to make sure that the facilities are available, and then I'll get back with you.
And also just be sure if it does change to update all the references online as well. There's different places. I know there was an issue with the DRB date. I forget if it was this month or next month, being different than what your schedule said. So if we can just double check the references to it online.
Yeah, we're real good with the clerk on making sure that they're cleaning up the notice of minutes and some of the other things.
Great. Okay, thank you. With that, we will adjourn for tonight.